Under normal circumstances, I should be celebrating episode 96 of Teh Tarik with Walid, but we are not living under normal circumstances. I think many of you have seen the images and videos coming out of Gaza yesterday. Just horrifying, people burning alive. And so if we are from time to time wondering why are we spending so much time talking about this, well, the reason is because it's still going on. And if mainstream media is still not gonna do its job, if mainstream media is gonna say, I don't know whether you saw that Straits Times headline, Israel has hit 40,000 Hamas targets in the past year. I mean, what a joke of a headline that was. So we have to, the people who are interested, if others are not going to talk about it, the people who are interested have to continue talking about it, no matter how tiring or annoying it is or repetitive, we still have to do it. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Shze-Hui.
Hi, Walid.
Hello, hi. So thank you so much for doing this. It should be 3 p.m. in London now.
Yeah, it's 3:04 and I'm in Edinburgh, so in Scotland.
Oh, right. Sorry, you're in Edinburgh.
I just
Yes.
moved.
Yes. So firstly, could you tell us just a little bit about yourself before I ask you about your journey?
Yeah, okay, sure. So, I guess maybe the more like relevant things are I'm Singaporean, so I grew up in Singapore and everything. When I was 19, I came to the United Kingdom. I worked in marketing for many years, and then I changed to becoming a writer. So I published my book this year. This year my book came out. I'm 31. My book's called The Story Game. Wait, I have it. Yeah.
Congrats. Where's the book? Can I see the?
It's a memoir. It was published in the US. And yeah, I guess apart from that, I also work as an editor. I do a lot of odd jobs. I guess I basically am a writer by trade, and I would say by calling. Yeah.
So you've been in the UK for 12 years.
Yeah, I have.
Okay. Why did you move there?
I moved here for university, but then I met my husband here, and then I stayed on.
I see. Okay. Which university was that for your undergrad? Or
I'm very embarrassed to tell you, I went to Oxford.
oh, why are you
Well,
embarrassed?
I'm just kidding.
Is this
Oxford.
okay? Yeah. Don't do this false humility, please.
No, I think maybe we'll talk about it later when we get into the podcast.
Okay, can.
that.
Let's do that. But I think you have an extremely interesting journey, which I, to be honest, wasn't aware of. Even though I've been following you,
Mm.
I guess I miss that part. So could you tell us what was your journey into being a pro-Palestine advocate?
Mm. Oh, it's very long. So I can tell you it's a long story.
We have 1 hour.
Okay, awesome. Well, so when I was in junior college, so when I was 17, 18 years old, I had a teacher, I did history at that time, and I also actually went on to do history in university after that.
In
But I
Oxford.
yeah,
Okay.
but a teacher at the time whose name is Mr. Michael Rollison. Maybe some people watching this know him. He was a half Lebanese, half white British
Oh,
teacher. And one of the topics we covered in history class as part of A-level syllabus was about Palestine, Israel. I mean, at that time, they called it the Arab-Israeli conflict, which I think is somewhat of a misnomer. But anyway, that was the name it was given in our syllabus, and we talked about it. And Mr. Rollison, I mean, I have so much respect for him until now because I think the way he covered the topic was just like, it felt like it was my first time experiencing autonomy as a student in Singapore because he came into class basically saying really clearly, he was like, I'm half Lebanese. And, I have a very clear point of view about who is right and wrong about this issue, but I'm not going to tell you. I mean, I'm just going to tell you, I don't think that this project is sustainable or good, but I'm not going to tell you what you should believe. Just like see the whole syllabus, learn as much as you can. If you want to read more, I can give you more resources, and then you can decide. And I think for me, that was so, it was just such a like transformative and different experience from anything I had had so far until that point in time in the Singapore education system. because I guess I was very used to being told what I should think and feel about contentious issues. Maybe not like consciously. It's not like the teachers were deliberately like spoon feeding me things, but I think there was often this feeling that people, they tell you, oh, these are the things you must say to get full marks, or these are the things you
Right.
must say to perform well. But this was my first time where I encountered a person who was so confident that if we saw the resources, we would come to our own conclusion. That he felt no need to control me, and I think because of that, I just became really like interested in this topic. And after that, after JC was over, in the I think there was like a 6 month, 7 month gap between the end of A levels and start of university. I decided I would go to Jerusalem because I was so interested in how Mr. Rollison had presented this issue. Like out of everything I learned in my 2 years at JC, this was like the one thing where I was like,
Oh,
I need to know more. Yeah, so I just how I did it was very like I think quite whack ass, and that's how I travel in general. I just Googled, like, I went online and I Googled, and I was like, how to live for free in Jerusalem, and then I found
oh,
this convent, like a Christian convent, that had a work program, so you can provide like physical labor, like kitchen labor and waitressing, and like you take care of the guests, like you do laundry, stuff like that. And they give you a room to live in the old city of Jerusalem for 3 months. So I signed up, and then I emailed them, and at that point in time, somebody who was a volunteer had mysteriously broken their leg. So they were like, "Yeah, we got a slot. You want to come?" Then I was like, "Yeah, sure." I just booked my air ticket, and
right. And you were a Christian?
I I was Christian. I think I don't identify as Christian anymore, but there is a part of me that's still very deeply religious. I guess it's like a self, There's a self inside me,
Oh,
but I wouldn't say I identify as the whole package as Christian anymore. But at that time, yeah, I was very religious. That's why I looked for this convent. They were a Christian convent. And my first experience of going to anywhere in Palestine was through this Christian lens, and I would say quite a Zionist lens, although I wasn't aware of it at that time. Lah.
right.
Yeah.
And that Christian convent, is it managed by, who is it managed by?
It's managed by European and
Right.
North Americans.
So
They're part of,
not Palestinian Christians. Okay.
well, but the interesting thing, and the reason why my viewpoints changed so radically in the 3 months I was there, was because the staff was Palestinian. So
Right.
this is a very common pattern,
Yeah.
right? In any of these, like, I would call them like in between, first of all, in between like global north, global south communities. The people who managed the convent were from like all these Western European countries or
Yeah.
American countries, and then the staff were like Palestinian people,
Right.
um, Christian Palestinian, and a lot of them were around my age, so they were like teenagers.
Right.
And we became friends because we worked together. Like we used our bodies together in the same space to perform tasks, and because of that, like we ended up becoming friends. Like I went to a lot of their houses, I met their families. They were very welcoming towards me, and
Right.
also very accepting of me as a very uncool like teenager. They taught me. They were like, "Hi, you don't know how to do your eyebrows? Okay, I teach you." And friends, and I think traveling in this way really like, yeah, like, it was my first time being like, oh, bro, I think my point of view maybe is a little
Mm,
bit different than what the ground reality is.
right.
Yeah.
So I have so many questions stemming from what you just said. So okay, so just briefly on the religion thing, is it anything to do with this conflict at all?
Mm,
Your religious
yes.
journey, is it?
Was yes. So I think that before, I don't want to speak for like all Christianity in Singapore, yeah, because I mean different churches different, but I think the church that I went to, or at least my experience of it, was that we were not like outwardly Zionist. Like it was not outwardly political, but Zionism was like encoded into the theology in a way that was almost invisible. The same way you could say, for example, capitalism is very much encoded into Singaporean Christian church experiences, but it's somewhat
Or,
invisible. I think
or the
same as
Singaporean experience as a whole?
yes. Yes, yes, but it's invisible. I would say it's like an invisible substratum where you have to like squint. But
Yeah.
that's how it was with Zionism. So I think there were just some things that for me it always felt like these were unshakable truths. Like, like Israel is somehow exempt from usual laws and practices that everyone around the world follows because
Yeah.
God chose them, for example. Or in church, we would do things like we would pray for Israel. Or I remember there was one pastor who I think he went through a phase where he was very into like things for Israel. So he would bring like this horn that he said like it's from like some Israeli practice, and then we would all like listen while somebody played the horn on stage.
Right.
So there were all these very subtle things like that kind of, I think, enshrine this idea that Israel is not like other countries, or it's somehow not a geopolitical entity, but almost
Right.
like a very fairyland place. you know.
Yeah,
And
I think, I mean, it's undeniable, right, that there is a strand of very modern Christianity. I mean, this is relatively new in the history of Christianity,
mm,
maybe the
yeah,
past 150,
yeah,
200 years, that really believes in, God will bless those who bless Israel, and they
yeah.
interpret Israel to be the modern day
Oh,
Israel, not the biblical
I
Israel, right?
can't tell you
Uh,
how many times I've heard that
yeah,
phrase, like in my 31 years of life on earth. Yes,
right,
I heard it.
right,
And I think
right.
the
So, please, please,
oh,
please, please continue.
for me, the scary, like how it's uttered. Yeah, like you said, it's uttered in this way that's very divorced from what's actually happening on the ground. Because if you ask a lot of these people, maybe not now, maybe now everybody knows, but last time you asked them, where's Israel on the map? You asked me, where's Israel on the map? I could not have told you, even though every week I say I pray for Israel.
Right,
I couldn't have told you like what kind of people live there. I don't know. But
right,
I pray for it. I believe God should protect it, So
right. So if I could push you back, push back a bit, right,
mm.
and not to push you back towards Christianity, but
No, but
I mean, I'm just wondering
it's part of
why, why that, why this journey made you leave your faith, or maybe not leave your faith, but become less attached to it when, I mean,
mm.
you've met Palestinian Christians, right? And they are very much part, I mean, resistance is very much in their blood,
Yes, very
and a lot of them believe that they are doing it because of their faith, right?
Yes, exactly. They were very proud of it. So actually, a lot of the friends I made in the convent, they will always tell me, they were like, I'm not Muslim, I'm Christian. I
Right.
was like, yes, for me. But yeah, I think for me personally, like, it was because of what we were talking about just now that it felt to me at that time. So I was only 19, which I would say is very young. I was just on the start of a journey, and I think I felt that Christian, at least in Singapore and the context where I grew up, Christianity, Zionism, capitalism, and empire were so intertwined. It's like a braid, right? And I could not deal with it. I was like, I just need to put this whole thing aside, and I need to like move on for a while. Like I'm kind of like the book I wrote is about CPTSD. I think the way I cope with things sometimes is dissociating. Like, I need space so that I can process. I'm a very, very slow metabolizer of the things that my body and my mind experience. So I was like, wow, I had this experience that really made me feel like the past 20 years of my life have been somewhat a lie, And I think it's a very difficult psychological experience
Yeah.
for anybody to go through, because that was not just a story, it was my life. I had a community, people who I still love and respect very much until this day. Like, I had a whole community of friends, of like elders, of people who I love, right? And I think what I had seen in Palestine made me realize that perhaps this community might have been founded somewhat on a story. Yeah, that was somewhat a fantasy. And that was a very difficult thing to deal with at 19. And I was just like, I cannot deal with this. I need to just like stop thinking about it for a while. And I think talking about this with you makes me think about what's happening in the world right now. I think I see that there are a lot of people who are probably going through a really similar thing, because it's hard. It's hard when your life has been revealed to be based on something that you didn't realize was there, right? Because it was
Yeah.
also a story, but it's also your life. Mhm.
Yeah, no, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate you opening up in that manner, and I also always like to remind people. I believe the most important person in the Christian faith was born in Palestine.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's an important part, and I think the Palestinian Christians have almost been erased by Western Christians in this entire thing.
Yeah.
No, and the Pope has talked about this, right? The Pope said every night he calls the pastor in Gaza. Every
Mm.
night he calls, yeah, he calls, and he says every day at 7 p.m.
Oh,
I think in America, especially, people really do not. I don't know why. I mean, I know why, but we can discuss that. But so I really don't think it's so much anti-Muslim. I mean, that's part of it, but I think it's really anti-Arab and
mm,
uh,
yeah.
this Orientalist mindset, which is why, okay, the Palestinian Christians, they are not really, even though they have been Christians older than any other community on earth, right? Uh, yeah.
Also, because maybe for a lot of these people, they have never met an Arab person,
Ye-
right? You know,
Yes.
it sounds very basic and stupid, right? But I think this is a really big thing. It's like if you've never met somebody, it's very easy to have stories in your mind about who they are and what
Yeah.
kind of person. Like, yeah.
No, 100%. You're absolutely right. So, do you know Reverend Manta Isaac?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love his sermon. So I remember the Christmas sermon he delivered a while ago. Wow, I feel like that brought me so much faith to this. Like I'm not even Christian anymore, but it just like brought me so much strength. I think to hear him articulate so clearly this link. Yeah, the link we were talking about between empire
Yeah.
and Christianity religion. Because I think it's always there and people just like whitewash it or they just glance over it like it's not there. But it is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's why when this
No,
conflict started people fell very quickly into these tracks, like predetermined tracks of who they support, who they believe, you know?
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And he was just talking about how it's important for Christians to understand what is going on there, right? The sermon was entitled Jesus Under the Rubble. Right? Honestly, right, that has to be one of the greatest speeches of all time.
It,
It has to be the way that the speech was crafted, right? So when as I don't know how do you identify yourself? Now you said that you have an inner Christian in you, but outwardly you're not.
I have a version of myself that still continues to exist, which is Christian. Maybe I would say I'm spiritual. Like
Okay,
the
okay, right. So, when you hear Manta Isaac, right? So, because you say when is your own experience in a particular church that
yeah,
sort of make you fall out of love with the faith, but
yeah.
when you hear people like Manta Isaac and these Palestinian Christians, do you then fall in love with the faith again, or
I think that's a complicated question. I feel like it's not part of my journey, but I feel a lot of love and admiration and respect for them. And
Mm,
especially with Munta Isaac, Reverend Munta Isaac, I think the amount of compassion that he continues to exhibit towards people who are in his faith, right? Because they are other Christians in the West, but who do not see him as human fundamentally. I think that's super inspiring. And like the fact that his faith can get him there is really incredible. And I think faith does that for a lot of people, right? I mean, like I said, a lot of the people in my church who I grew up with, I still have so much respect for them because some people, the road is through faith, right? The road to get there, to this humanizing thing that we need in order to live in this world is through faith. And for some people, it's not. I suspect that for me it's not, but I think for a lot of people, faith helps. And I
okay,
see when I look at these people, I guess. Yeah.
okay, thank you. So let's move out of confession and into other other question. So I thank you. I think yours is really useful because people always, as a snide remark, they just throw, oh, why don't you go there and see it for yourself, right?
Oh my
If you're
god,
so
I was thinking about this last night. I was literally thinking about all the trolls who have messaged me that I'm just like, I win already.
yeah, exactly.
It's
Exactly,
like, go
So
there.
people say that, right? Like, oh, why don't you go there? And I mean, you have more experience. I mean, I have been there as well. So we have seen this, like, and in fact, we don't need to see. The Palestinians are showing us and the
Yeah,
Israelis are showing us what is going on in the world now,
really.
going on there now. It's such a ridiculous argument, but anyway, it's still useful to just debunk that because you have been there,
Yeah,
done that, and you went also not as somebody who's pro-Palestinian, right? You
yeah.
didn't go with rose-tinted glasses and
No,
thinking that, oh, I love the Palestinians, right? So,
I was never
uh,
curious. I was just like, like what I learned in school doesn't match. what I
right,
so I'm curious.
right, which is why I think your experience going there is more powerful than mine because
Mm,
I already had certain ideas which were
mm.
confirmed by my visit.
Okay.
But it was sort of overturned, right? It was overturned, like a lot of the assumptions that you have. So I think yours is a more powerful story. So thank you for that. how is the mood? Let's move on. How is the mood now in London, Edinburgh, in UK now? What
I
do you
think
see?
there's a very big feeling of change. And actually, sometimes I wonder whether people in Singapore, like my friends and family in Singapore, realize the extent to which, like, things, at least in the West, have been really fundamentally
They
transformed. I think by
don't.
this.
So that's why we need you here now to
Okay,
tell us.
yeah. It's I think there's a huge mood of change because the protests in London, sometimes up to 1 million people are at that protest, It's a huge, like, all societal thing where people of different ages, backgrounds, religions, races are all present. And I think for a lot of people, myself included, and people in the writing industry, definitely I see this happening across the arts. Because I mean that's where I'm from, so I see it there. But I think it's happening more broadly at a societal level also. I think we are realizing that like so many of the institutions that are were kind of like almost invisible institutions. Like you don't think about them, you don't think about McDonald's when you walk down the street, whatever. It's always there. You don't think about like the bank. You're just like it's a bank. But I think it suddenly became very clear that there were all these ties of complicity that were enabling Israel to go on. Because, at the beginning, even in November, people were like, this must stop. This is terrible. Like, what is happening is already beginning to break a lot of international laws that keep us safe across borders. And people were like, okay, it needs to stop. But then when we tried to stop it, it was like, why can't we stop it? And then after that, people were like, oh, when you actually trace the roots of the power system upholding this apartheid country, it's very deep and it comes all the way back to things in the West that have been normalized here. And I think for a lot of people here, that was a big wake up call, a big shock, because it's difficult to see that the life you have built is resting upon the privilege and not only not the privilege, but the disenfranchisement of other people. Right? It's a horrible feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that's what's going on now, lah. As far as I can see
yeah,
it, there's a lot of action being taken to like
yeah.
excavate.
And I guess in the UK, the impetus is even more for the people who really care about this, right? So
Mm,
for I guess two main reasons. One is I think the UK is a more politicized society
mm,
than Singapore. Anyway, Singaporeans generally are not as political. But
mm.
secondly, also UK is more than just complicit in this.
Yeah,
UK is enabling.
yeah,
They are enabling it, right?
yeah,
As other than the US, they are the biggest enablers essentially, right? So there is whereas Singapore, whatever Singapore does won't really affect what happens in the middle. It's not that we shouldn't do, because it is about taking a moral stand as well. I
mm,
think it's very important about drawing the moral line in the sand,
yeah,
but realistically, it's not going to affect much. But the UK actually can affect
yes.
and will affect. What they do will affect what goes on. So I guess that's why people like yourself feel um more attached
Mm,
about doing something for
mm.
this. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was literally thinking about this recently because I was messaging. So I recently went to an arts residency in Morocco, and I was messaging a friend, and because we were sharing. I mean, I'm sure you've seen like the video of the person being burned alive in the hospital,
Yeah.
and like I was like telling her I feel insane when I see this video. I feel like this like it makes me feel like something in my brain is leaking out through my orifices. I just feel insane. And then she was like, yeah, she feels terrible, but she feels. I mean, and then we were talking about this. She was like, yeah, a lot of people here don't care, or like they the way of coping with it is not to talk about it. And I was like, yeah, I think it's different for you because for me, I live in a country where we are literally causing this problem. Like
Exactly. Exactly.
like funding that bomb, you know.
Right.
So I think it really, yeah. I'm glad you said that about Singapore. I mean, thanks for clarifying. I think it is true.
Yeah.
We have different roles and responsibilities lah around the world,
Indeed.
and maybe showing resistance also. Like one thing
Indeed.
to have can also be a kind of resistance sometimes, depending on who you are. Yeah.
Right, right, right. So, Professor Rashid Halidi, whom I cite a lot, and
Mm.
he said that this battle will not be won in the Middle East. It won't even be won in Palestine. It's going to be won in the heart of the West, in
Mm.
America and the UK,
Yeah.
right? So that's why I think you people in the UK have an outsized importance, which is why you must use it, right? We just had a conversation about this. I mean, on IG, right? So basically, on 7 October, after 7 October, basically Israel told the world, come, look at this, look at what the Palestinians are doing to us. And I think the world, people in the UK looked and they didn't like it.
Oh gosh,
Um,
people were like, what the heck? Why you
yeah,
ask me to look
exactly.
at this?
People were fine living their lives until they looked,
Yeah.
right? So Amira mentioned that Singaporeans, I think we cannot wrap our heads around 1 million protesters.
Mm,
That is madness. And that is the highest number ever, right? I
yeah.
believe,
I think
ever. In
the Iraq war maybe a
I
bit
know, I
more,
know,
but
I know the Iraq war that time was drew about 2 to 3 million or
mm,
something.
yeah.
But I
Yeah.
believe the Palestinian protest is the one that is done the most number or something.
Yes, it's been on
Uh,
for a year.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean,
And consistently every Saturday there will be something
yeah.
somewhere,
Yes.
in the UK, and that's extraordinary. And I just wanted you to share a little bit. I was there as well, but
Mm,
people tend to think it's only brown people at this
yeah.
protest. People tend to think it must be these Muslims, must be the Indians, Pakistanis, Bengalis, right? So could you share a little what's the demographic of the crowd?
Oh, dude, it's like all kinds of people. Like people bring their babies. Like some people are like old grandmothers. People are like on walkers. Sometimes it's like big families, and you can see that even with the play cards people hold up. I think I've never seen such a diverse cross section of humanity. Maybe that's one way I would say it. The first time I went, I was like, wow, there are people from every walk of life, every age group. And yeah, like people you wouldn't expect, the most normal looking people who are just they look like they would otherwise be shopping in H&M,
As
but then they decide
as
to come today.
opposed as opposed to what? Shze-Hui?
And, you know,
Abnormal looking
they
people.
were very angry protesters.
Okay, okay.
I was,
As opposed to, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Right.
people
No.
like, you
So
know.
when people think about the pro-Palestine crowd, people think of me more than you, right? Someone who looks like me more than someone who looks like you, right? But I think it's changing, or it has changed dramatically already. The
it was
demographic of the
it was already very diverse from the beginning. It's just
yeah.
that they not reported. So okay, I mean just to give you an example. Oh, and my friend Farah said, yeah, you see like Holocaust survivors. They're also like big Jewish blocks, and I think they also get erased because they are not convenient for the narrative. They're just like, okay, we pen the camera. So I mean, just to give you one very like specific example, there was a match I went to. Me, like one white British person, my friend who is like a hijab, she wears hijab and she's from Somalia. So, and I think one other person who is like, she has a fro, so she obviously looks like she's like not like white British. And then a newspaper, like a tabloid newspaper, took a photo of my friend and me. We just happened to be in the front. So, and then they cut away me and the white person. So they just put the two brown faces. And then
Wow.
we were also like furious when that photo came out because we were like, wow, there's so many layers of like storytelling that
Wow.
went into how this photo, because they don't
What
want you to.
tabloid was it? Daily Mail or
I can't remember. Yeah, maybe it was Daily Mail. It's one of those lah. That kind like it was a Sun.
wow.
Maybe it was just like
Wow, it's
a horrible
embarrassing.
moment lah. I think
But
in terms.
and the media, Western media, I think has been more than just careless, or I would say they are complicit. They are absolutely they are doing this with I've seen CNN commentaries. The British media. I would say at least there's a bit more diversity.
Mm-hmm.
The American media has been like completely awful. I mean, of course, the British media is not great as well. You see the BBC headlines, right? Always passive voice,
Yeah.
right? Five
Oh,
dead in Lebanon from random airstrike by don't know who,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean like the Lebanese people bomb themselves?
Yeah,
You don't.
yeah. When you can be sure if it's an attack by a Muslim,
Mm,
right? You will see that in the headline, right?
yeah.
You can be sure if it's an attack by Palestinians towards Israelis, you will see that in the headline, right? And come on, we know that Mehdi Hassan has documented this about how there's pressure by editors, by the board for them to omit,
Yes.
lies of commission and lies of omission.
Yes.
Um,
I
so
mean,
it's
even
it's
last year I think November or December already, it was being reported that people in the BBC were crying in the toilet because they feel so disgusted with themselves for the way that their bosses are telling them to censor the news. You know, I mean, like the news may not be very trustworthy, but there's Twitter. All of us have, all of us have internet access. We got eyes, you know.
Yeah,
the,
exactly.
the horrible feeling for these people who are producing these documents because they are
Yeah,
literally whitewashing history as it
yeah,
happens. And
yeah.
yeah,
They
trying
are part of this. And for these people, right? And for people who are, there are, I would say there are different types of people, right? There are different people who cannot do anything, or they feel like they cannot do anything and they have to remain silent.
yeah,
I think I can still accept that. But for people who actively, maybe you're further down the chain in an organization and your boss asks you to report this when you know it's untrue, right? And you do it anyway, right? That's
mm,
only to a certain extent you can use that I was just following instructions, right? I think
yeah,
that excuse, it can only be done. I mean, okay, if it massages your conscience, you sleep at night better. But no, you are complicit. Not at the level of your bosses, but you must say something. You must do something.
yeah.
It cannot be that you just say, "Oh, I'm just following
Exactly.
orders," right? Everybody follows orders. Yeah,
And this is your life. You know what I mean? This is your life. Eh? Like
yeah,
the thing, it's not like a practice run. This is literally the only life you have. Are you sure you want to use it this way?
yeah,
That's how I feel like.
yeah.
Like
So,
eh,
yeah.
anyway.
No,
I was
Iza said Singapore's mainstream media isn't so innocent. Yeah, I started off this episode before you came in, Shze-Hui. I said that mainstream media in Singapore has been pretty bad. I was one of the signatories to this letter by Lepak Conversation. Shout out to them for asking Singapore to recognize Palestine.
yes,
Not one mainstream media outlet covered it. When I think it's a significant thing, and it's a significant moment in Singapore civil society history as well. But mainstream media doesn't want to cover it, and mainstream media headlines have been terrible.
yeah.
Um, but right, why is it? Why am I not super upset? Because mainstream media in Singapore is not that great on anything. So
I agree. Yeah, thanks for doing that. I think you're right. It's a very significant moment because it represents the will of the people, right?
yeah,
And no, it's not like people. It's not like you will issue a survey from the top down. Like, what do you think? It's like the feeling of the desire is so organic that people organize by themselves
yeah,
to have and make this demand known. And
yeah,
I think, yeah, what that just makes me think there's such a divorce at the
yeah. And
moment between
just
narrative.
cover it. Your job is to cover news. No one is asking you to endorse the letter. Just
Yeah,
cover it.
report.
So it's disappointing, no? So Amira said, "This is your life." She quoted you, "This is your life. Are you sure you want to use it this way?" I used to think that, oh, how do these people sleep? And actually, a lot of them sleep very well at night, better than you and I do. Honestly, I don't think we should use that argument anymore, because they sleep very well. But I mean, okay, they just be honest. What I would say to them is just be honest, as in, if this is the price you pay, just be honest about it. Don't pretend like you're doing some higher purpose. Oh, I'm doing this so that eventually, right, I can serve the greater good. If you are
Yeah,
not doing, if you are not using whatever leverage or power you have during a genocide, you will never use it for any other greater good.
I
That's
agree.
just it.
I totally, and I think something that people tend to forget also, right, is that your character is literally being formed in these moments. So, like, when you make these compromises, I think there's like often this false narrative people tell themselves, like, okay, this is not the real me. There's a secret me, and the secret me is a good
Yeah,
person,
yeah.
but the fake me, the one that is saleable, can go and do these things. But it doesn't work like that. You are one self, and whatever
Yes.
the thing you are doing is you. Like the actions you are doing are you.
Yeah.
And I think think they can reserve this secret good self for a day when they have enough power. But it doesn't work that way because the more you climb, the bigger the sacrifice is going to get. You know what I mean? At the next stage, the sacrifice you're going to have to make of the reputation you've built is going to get bigger. So why would you do it then if you can't do it now? You have to
It's
start
like
now. I mean, and
100%.
as people say this thing like peace is not the destination, it's a journey. And I think it's the same about authenticity. Authenticity is the journey.
Yeah.
You know?
100%. I completely agree with you. I completely agree. I always hear, how the tenure system works in
Mm.
academia, and people say that, oh, after I get tenure, then I'm gonna push the boundaries. No,
Mm.
you're not. If you didn't push the boundaries before, you are not gonna do it. And
Right.
like you said, like what makes you think suddenly you will change
Yeah.
after? 7 to 8 years of not doing anything, right? You'll
Yeah.
just come up with a new reason for
Exactly.
your cowardice. You'll just come up with a new reason for your
Yeah.
passivity.
Yeah.
Um,
We're
yeah.
talking about it very like maybe like a bit judgmental way, but I think I also feel a lot of like empathy and sadness primarily for these people because what you're talking about reminds me a lot of my friends who like I grew up with. I went to RJ. A lot of my friends work for the government or they work in like very high positions of power. And I feel empathy, I feel sadness because like the thing you're losing is yourself, you know? Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's sad. I like you, you're my friend.
Yeah.
So I think
And
sometimes when I see that, oh, it really breaks my heart
and
actually.
and I understand, and unlike you, I am quite judgmental of
I
people.
am but
So
not.
but I completely understand civil servants who, they cannot take public stands. I
Mm,
understand that, I'm quite realistic, but you must do something in private at least.
yeah.
You must at least say
But
something
God,
to the people. And if you don't do that as well, right? Don't pretend like this is about that. There's a higher purpose. There is none, right?
mm,
Just say that, okay, you are a servant of your salaries, and that's all. That's all. But at the very least, right, you get a seat. You have the ear of policymakers, right? Use that, right? What's so difficult? Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but thank you. I mean, that was really wise what you said, and resonated a lot with me. And like
Mm.
you, I have friends that I must say that I I don't know how else to say this, but lost respect for
Yeah,
throughout the
same.
past year.
I,
Yeah.
I think it I would say that the past year more than any year of my life so far has fundamentally reorganized my social circle and also the people I would like to associate myself
Mm.
with. Because before this there were I had a lot of assumptions. I'm a writer. So in my industry I assumed that there were certain things I would like chase or like these are the unspoken goods. Everybody's like, oh, we all run after this thing and why? We don't know why, but we think it's very important to try and get a Pulitzer. Something like that. And I feel like the last year has just revealed to me that many of these things are things I don't want. I actually don't want these things at all. Like they don't resonate with the kind of human I think I want to be in order to go into the world that's changing at this rate. I don't want these like prestigious prizes people are
Yeah.
throwing to me to say like, okay, and then I give you this. I don't want it. And
Yeah.
I think that's also how I feel about people.
Yeah.
There were maybe some people who I was like, okay, like I don't know if we vibe, but it's okay. We can be in the same circle. But now I'm just like, being with you actively, actively makes me feel bad,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
makes me feel like all that I'm living in is not the real world. It's a fantasy world of your creation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
sometimes I also feel bad because I think yeah, people who just don't really want to live in reality. The scary thing is that reality is not gonna wait for you. No matter how
Yeah.
much you think, it's just going to change, and then you will be left behind, and that is
So
sad again. Again, sad.
so And this is the thing, right? Because we know for sure when God willing, when Palestine becomes free, right? These same people, right, they will be at the front of the queue, visiting Palestine. So, oh, I've always prayed for a free Palestine,
The
I,
alignment.
you know, and
Yeah.
people, and if they say these people who are quiet now, right? And then they say, I was always praying for Palestine. Keep your prayers, man. Like,
Yeah.
I don't keep your prayers. Prayer is an important part of my life. I mean, ultimately, as a person who believes in God, I believe ultimate action is in God's hands, not people's hands. But you cannot just say, oh, prayer, and then that's it, right?
Mm,
And then I'm not gonna basically what I'm saying is I'm keeping stock of who said what during this
mm,
period. I am.
mm.
And
Yeah.
and you may think I am petty. I am being petty, but I think rightly so. Because I'm not gonna we've seen this movie before, right?
Yeah.
The British government and the American government considered Nelson Mandela to be terrorist, right? Now
Mm,
he is like almost
yeah.
like a demigod, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But they were the very ones who banned him,
Mhm.
who said he's a terrorist, and also they are selective about his legacy, right?
Yes.
This guy he said his freedom is incomplete without the Palestinians, right? Yes.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I feel like we are going through that moment now where all of us should keep stock of who's saying what
Yeah.
and remind them later on.
I agree, and I think yeah. Somebody says yeah. It's not pettiness; it's consistency. I think
Yeah.
that, but not even like I'm holding a grudge or anything. Just that like in this moment, I don't want to build ties with you. So it's unlikely that we will work together in the future. It's just like that. Yeah, and I think conversely, like maybe the more like energetic, positive way to talk about it is like I think I'm also actively choosing who I do want to build ties with based on like what is happening and the people who I see standing up and having courage, and it's bringing a lot of new relationships into my life and a lot of new opportunities also, because like I've seen so many brave and like people who have integrity in the industry I'm in, like writing, and it makes me want to know them. It makes me want to like do things with them or do projects with them or like tap into their brain to understand where that integrity comes from, you know? So it's not only just about like I want to like throw these people away. I think it's also like it's brought new things into my life,
Yeah.
and
No,
I'm grateful for that.
likewise, absolutely. So just as I have, I think, lost respect for some people, I think I've gained newfound respect for others, and made connections that with people like yourself. I didn't know you before
Yeah.
this. We wouldn't have connected because of this. If not because of this, Erica, Shu Ann, who has 100,000 followers on Instagram. I never knew of her, just out of my own ignorance. So it is, I think we do have these new friendships and alliances that have been built. And hopefully it's a stronger one because it's based on principles rather than based on the moment. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to interview this professor of Jewish studies in America. So he's a Jew, he's a professor of Jewish
Mhm.
studies who's very critical of Israel. And
Mhm.
he's in America, no? So he is a Jew in America. And you can imagine that a pro-Palestine Jew in America. I mean, that's it, man. That's and he has
Must
gone through everything, like people trying to get him sacked, uh, frivolous complaints against him, but he is standing strong. And that is the connection I would have never made if not because of this. And also when I look at him, right, what if an American Jew, right, is doing this, right? What is my excuse? Like
yeah.
he's putting himself out there. He's gonna be so much more dangerous for him. Like, what is my excuse? Right?
Yeah, that's actually how I feel about the people who are doing activism for Palestine in Singapore. I mean, I know some people are in watching this, but my friends from Singapore who are continuing, like under great personal risk to speak out, basically, and to say the words that need to be said so that everyone doesn't feel so insane. That's how I feel about them. Give me strength. Like, I feel like if they can do it, then I, who live in the UK, I can do it also,
Right. Okay.
Like, yeah.
Thank
So,
you, Shum. So I want to go off script a little. Did
yeah,
you vote in the previous election, the
in
UK election?
UK, yes, I did.
Who did you vote for?
I can't tell you this on video though. Fine.
Okay, wait. So the reason I asked is because in the West now,
Oh,
people really
is it
there's
because of
there's a real dilemma for you guys, right? There is a real dilemma for you guys. I mean, at least in the UK, at least yourself, there's the SNP that you can just throw your weight behind. There's the Lib Dems, there will be people that you can. There's George Galloway and those types. But in the
yeah,
US, uh, the
yeah,
pro-Palestinian crowd, they really are in a bind now. On one hand,
I
you
know,
don't want to endorse what Harris is doing. On the other, the option is Trump, who has said he's going to be worse,
I
right?
know.
I mean,
Yeah.
and I think we should take him at his word, right? But also, you cannot just let Harris go. So the reason why I asked you who you voted for, is just because of that. As in, but okay, we don't have to voting in secret, so we don't have
No,
to.
it's okay, but the thing about this is like I feel immense empathy. I feel immense sympathy for my friends in the US who have to vote because yeah, like you said, it's a terrible choice. It's like they're basically increasingly becoming one package. But I think, yeah, I think when a systemic change this big is happening, when a whole system is basically understanding for the first time what it is and dropping the pretense, then yeah, I think the hopeful part of me would like to believe that there will be a moment of systemic creativity. Yeah, but maybe not for this election, maybe later, you know.
Right.
I would like to believe lah for my friends in the US that a better future will come.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are also people.
Exactly. And I think the ultimate thing that this has exposed is just the hypocrisy of a lot of the Western world, right?
Yeah,
A lot of
not easy.
the
This was their life, you know. This was their
yeah,
lives. Built
yeah.
their lives in this system, and suddenly it's being revealed that all along, like the whole system was, you know, it was built on something that was not true. That's very hard.
Exactly, and a lot of these people who before this, and we also cannot be, I guess, too dismissive, right? Because
Mm.
different people are on different journeys, and if you grow up in Singapore, you grow up in US, the default is always to think of, oh, Israel is in the right. That's the default. That's the
People
default.
to
Yeah.
unlearn.
So we cannot be too dismissive of them because it requires a lot of unlearning. Like I mean, you started off saying that very eloquently, right? Like the past 21 years of your life. I mean, the 19 or 20 years of your life, you had to undo that
Mm.
based on your experience in Jerusalem. And people who are attached, genuinely attached to the idea of democracy and
Yeah,
human rights and so on, right? Um, and
yeah.
now
And
yeah.
oh, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, no, it's fine, it's fine. Yeah,
I
carry on, carry on. Yeah.
I was going to say, yeah, I think especially because, you know, sometimes my friends in the West, even here in the UK, sometimes they'll say like, oh, I'll tell them, I think Singapore is a communitarian society. But even just like recently, I did an interview with someone in the US where I said this. And then the way he interpreted that was like, oh, it's a place full of propaganda. But I was just like, no, also there are other things that you don't know because you've only lived in the US, right? I mean, like, for example, we have great train systems. Okay, not right now, but generally, you know, like infrastructure works. There's a lot of like sharing of resources that you don't get in like parts of the West because it's less individualistic. There are just other ways, you know. There's so many ways to live in the world and to relate to other people, which is what politics is. It's just like how do you relate to others, right? How do you organize your relations to other people? And yeah, like you said, I think when people grow up, not only like being very attached to a system, but being fed this story that their system is the best. And they are constantly fed this story like that. Your system is the best. Look at all these countries that don't have the system. Look, they're so much worse than us. It's very hard to let go of that lah. It's a real journey of unlearning to realize that other people's way of organizing the world is as real and as valid and has as many upsides probably as yours.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's why I would say lah.
I do find there are different categories of either people who are pro-Israel or just outright Zionists. There are different categories, and one category, no doubt it comes from prejudices about Islam and Arabs and Muslims and so on, right? But I don't think everybody is in that category. I think there are some people who just, they genuinely believe that, like what these people were saying, Israel has a right to defend itself, which I think no reasonable person would disagree with that.
Mm,
Right? Then the question is always, does Palestine have a right to defend itself? How does that look like? How does that look like?
yeah.
But yeah, I think there are different categories of those people that disagree with us.
Mm,
I think it's important to identify where they are at because there is a group of people who I think it's very difficult to convince. But I think we
for
should
sure.
try to convince the others, the ones who are mild, softer,
Maybe.
softer Zionists. Or yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
To be very honest with you, Walid, I think that used to be my point of view, but I actually think that fundamentally it's not possible to convince anyone. It's not possible to compel, maybe not convince. Like you can tell them what you think, but you cannot compel another. I feel like I cannot compel another person to believe something or feel something. I can only tell them what it's like for me.
Yeah.
And then they have to go on their because a lot of the time I think the resistance is so deep. It's so deep that it's not even about the thing I'm saying, you know. It's about what I maybe represent to the person or the
No,
person
it's
has
not. No,
shadow
you're
side.
right. I don't think a lot of this is about facts and all of that. If it was about facts, it would have been settled already, right? Um,
It's a,
but it is not about that. But I guess my disagreement with you on that is what other option do we have, right? I mean, and the reason why we are activists is because we want change, right? And change involves changing people's minds, right? Like, we want the government to change.
mm,
And honestly, right, the government will change easily when majority of people agree on something,
mm,
right? I have no doubts if, let's say, 90% of Singapore felt something, right? The government would move in that direction as
hmm.
well.
You notice a lot
Uh,
when you live there.
Sorry?
I mean, you would notice a lot better than I do because you
No,
live
no, no.
there.
I think this is true elsewhere as well. But of course, in the US, because the interest the political system is so entrenched in a particular way that they can circumvent uh, public will to some degree. But even then, if there is a decisive change, like
Mm.
you said will happen. What was the main? You said creative something, creative
Oh,
systemic change.
but like the
Yeah. So
recreate itself and create
yeah.
something new.
So I think if that happens, I think the government and the candidates will react as well.
Mm.
So I guess we'll just end off on one question. How have your family and friends reacted? Like specific, like very close ones. Like not talk about second tier or third tier friends, acquaintances, but your family and friends. How have they reacted to you?
I think this is related to what we were saying just now, what I was telling you just now about. I think that fundamentally it's not possible to compel someone to care about something they don't care about. I think, yeah, so not all of my friends and family are very invested in this issue. I think, and equally, like, even if they are invested or they feel like, oh, this is wrong, this is bad, they might not always use their words to describe it. So I think for me personally, like at the beginning in like October, November, this used to drive me crazy. Like I would be like, why do you not care? Like how can we live under the same roof and then you don't care about this issue that is so important to me? It feels like it's maybe one of the biggest issues of my lifetime. How can you just not like you're just like when I talk about it, the person obviously switch off. But I think like the way I deal with it nowadays is I think I recognize that not everybody realism is not helpful for everyone. Like I think there are some people who maybe the outlet for change is not their voice but their body, like their actions. They need to do things. And maybe in order to do the correct things, they need to like have a mind that is not like full of like anxiety or full of like anger and anguish all the time. Because like I have a very high threshold for these unpleasant emotions, right? Because like I think my most powerful tool is my voice. I'm a writer. And like it's my face, it's like that's my persona that I give to the world, and that's what I offer, my value. But I think for some people that's not true. Like, they need to have like a slightly like lighter intellectual experience so that they can do the correct things. So that's how I accept it now. Lah. Everybody knows what they need. And I think kind of like maybe just continuing to believe in the goodness of other people, yeah, and in their capacity for understanding what's going on. Like people are not stupid. People are watching. We're all watching the same footage.
Yeah.
And unless a person is very delusional or very, very entrenched in their beliefs about what's going on. And there are some people like that, right? But if a person is not like that, then I just try and let it go. I try to accept that they know what's best for them. Like they know how they can best be a human being in this changing world, lah. Not me.
Right. And you said your voice is what you have, and you have been using it in an excellent manner. So thank you for that.
Mm.
There's this Dina Muhammad
Oh
from
yeah.
from Gaza. So yeah, so please, those who are here, please click on her profile and follow her. Um, Amira asks what dear friend is she? Well, you are a friend, Amira.
Close friends.
You're a friend, so
Like talking to
uh, so Dina says, Sarah says to Dina, we keep you and your family in our prayers. So any final words, Shze-Hui?
mm, No, I think I just want to say thank you for hosting me, but also for all the conversations you posted. I think, yeah, it's so helpful that you have built this resource, like this pool of resources. And like, I think even when I scroll through the list of all the people you spoke to, it brings me such hope that there are so many Singaporeans who care.
Yeah,
And people are whatever way they can with whatever tools are available to them. And it's so cool that you have brought all of us together, to collect all it's like I feel like it's like recharging to look at that power, that list of like everybody's power in one place. So thank you a lot for doing that, Walid, for
appreciate
your
it. Appreciate it before this becomes a mutual thanking society. I really want. I really appreciate your voice. I think you are I can see that you are a writer, so your words, honestly, and throughout the conversation, I was very mesmerized at many parts of the conversation. The way you choose your words and the way you are able to eloquently deliver your points. I think definitely more eloquently than I could. So I appreciate that, and thank you for doing whatever you do. As I said, your voice would matter much more than mine. So I really
Oh.
appreciate it. And thank God for the SNP, right? As a protest vote.
Lah, but I think for me, I just let's see what comes next, lah. Let's see
Yes.
what comes.
Yeah,
System change.
we must have hope. We must have hope. And I think at the very least, the UK I think is on the precipice of change on this issue, more so than the
Mm,
US. But yeah, hopefully, yeah.
yeah.
So obviously, there's a lot of love for you in the comments. Thank you so much, Shze-Hui.
For tuning in. So nice
Okay,
to see.
bye bye. Good night.
Okay.
Bye. Good afternoon.
Oh,
Bye. Bye.